Welcome back to Motor 41 here in Southern California. We've got a new project in the shop today, and we've been holding on to this for the last couple of weeks while we finished up work on the Yamaha LT2 and the Honda CB750 and also the Yamaha CS3. So I don't know if you've been able to see those videos. If you haven't, please check out some of the links below in the description. So the next project that we're going to share with you is a 1968 Yamaha YAS1C. We're very familiar with those, having completed the restoration of a rare pearl white version for the Quail, I think in 2018-19, something like that. We'll put some pictures in the feed here now so you can see it, but without further ado, let's show you this poor old girl and let you see what we're going to be working on over the next couple of weeks. So here she is, red and cream 1968 Yamaha YAS1C. Poor thing. Seat is with the customer currently, so I'm not too worried about the seat. But initial impressions are this old bike's had quite a hard time. You can see from condition of the footrest, it's been well run. It's obviously been crashed. We've got some bent gear shifter. The motor doesn't look particularly good. It's covered in grime and oil at the moment. You can see the carb is covered. There's also a good soaking of oil on the bottom of the crank there. I can't tell where that's been coming from. I would imagine it's maybe from the exhaust gaskets, and actually the exhausts are loose, so it's very possible. But there's oil up the cylinder too. There's oil all over the right hand clutch cover, so that gasket could be leaking as well. And yeah, poor old girl's looking a little bit sad. Let's give her a wash, take her outside. I think the first thing we'll do is probably get the exhaust pipes off so that we've got better access to the bottom of the engine. Get the sump guard off as well. It's actually nice that's there. They're very often missing. People take those off. So let's start there. Let's give it a clean and let's see what we've got to work with. Tank is definitely going to need some work. That's been lined. That's a mess. I can also see the petcock is bent as well, so maybe the tank was taken off at some point and the petcock got knocked or the tank got dropped. But anyway, so let's get started. Let's get the exhaust off. Let's get her outside. Let's give her a wash. Let's see what we've got to work with. So the first thing we'll do is undo the collars for the exhaust at the front, on the left and the right side. And we'll take off the brackets, loosen up the swing arm bolt so that we can lift the exhausts off the bike. This will give us better access to the front of the engine. We'll also plug the exhaust holes there. We're going to put rubber plugs in there so that we don't, when we take it outside and wash it in a few minutes, so that we don't get water inside the engine. Not that honestly it's going to make much difference at this point. We're going to totally tear the engine down, but we still don't want more in there than we need to. Now we've got the exhaust off, you can see the extent of the grease and the grime all over the engine. It's on both sides, it's below the exhausts. It's certainly been like that for a while. So next step, we'll just remove the carbs, pull both of those off. We'll also remove the oil tank just to give us a bit more room. Taking off the air boxes gives us better access to the carbs. With all that out of the way, both of the carbs can be slid off. Without doubt, two of the dirtiest carbs I think I've ever seen. They're definitely going to take a little bit of work. Let's get them into soak overnight. Next step, we'll take off the tank, lift that off. It's definitely going to need some work. It's pretty crusty and there's an old liner inside. And then we'll also just have a look at this wiring and try and work out what's going on with the wiring. Off comes the skid plate. That again will just let us get under the engine and give it a better clean. Next up, time to have a look at the oil, and it's really full. I've never seen I thought the owner may have filled it to store it, but no such luck. It was very suspicious that the oil level is up near the top of the dipstick. You can see we've got a dead mouse there, and there was all sorts of crap that's fallen inside the engine from the missing plug on the top. So yeah, it's really not looking good, and this just confirmed it. First 5 seconds of oil coming out, unfortunately it isn't actually oil, it's just water. So given that the engine's been sitting with water inside it for we don't know how long, it's definitely going to need a full teardown. So with the oily water mixture that's come out of the engine, with all of that out, we'll continue work just to remove some of the other items to make it a little easier to clean. We're going to clean the bike outside with the engine in the frame. It'll just be easier to give it a rinse. But unfortunately the chain is locking and jamming, so it's really hard to move the bike around. So we'll just remove the cover, clean up some of the dirt and debris that's stuck behind the left-hand case, and just pull off the chain so that it makes it easier to move the bike around. We're obviously going to be cleaning behind here properly when we've got the engine out of the frame, but we just want to get most of the dirt off the shift shaft so that the cover will slide back on nicely. So before we go any further, just done a compression check, and quite remarkable, actually got 150 psi on the right cylinder. We'll switch over and try the left cylinder and see if it's the same, but that's pretty healthy. On the left cylinder, although the gauge is going down now, we actually had 170, which is even better than the right, but we're also getting a lot of sludge as we kick the bike over coming out of the cylinder, so I'm pretty sure the crank seals have gone and the crankcase is full, so definitely time to break this baby apart. So we'll scrape off some of the residual dirt and muck, and you can see I've got a plug in the top of the crankcase there, which was actually the stopper was missing, so we know a lot of that dirt's gone into the engine. We've plugged up the exhaust, we've plugged up the two intakes so that we don't get any more water than we need to and dirt inside the engine, and then we'll give it a good scrub and clean, and it'll just make it a little bit easier to work with. The engine's looking a little bit better now, so next step, I want to just put a battery in, sort out a little bit of this strange wiring we've got going on, where we've got greens to browns to blues. I don't quite know what was going on with the wires, but it looks like the The last owner had blue wire, so that's what he used. Anyway, we'll hook up a battery. I haven't checked to see if we've got any spark. It'd be interesting to see if we've got any spark. And yeah, let's give it a go, see what we've got. So the battery's in, but we can see we've got some incorrect terminals. And I don't really like this wiring that's there, so we'll replace those wires a little later on, but for now we'll just put some OEM style bullet connectors on and kick the bike over and see if we've got any spark. Yes, we have some spark. It's not very good, but some spark is better than no spark. Check this side too. Yeah, we've got spark. So we're going to carry out a leak down test on this left cylinder. We've got 5 psi in there, which is normally enough. And I can see that's absolutely holding steady. There's a very slight drop. I could have a little leak from my sketchy tyre valve that's just inserted in the cylinder there. That's better. But yeah, we're going to change these crank seals anyway when we split the engine, but that's actually really good. I've seen bikes that run with more leakage than that. So left cylinder's holding up well. The good news is that's telling me the central crank seal is in pretty good shape. Let's just give the other side a try. Now I can actually hear air coming out of the oil filler hole. I know I might have a little bit of leakage from my tyre valve that's just inserted into the cylinder there, but that's falling rapidly, and I suspect that the right hand crank seal is out. It's not holding at all. And I can actually hear air coming out of the oil filler hole, so I'm pretty sure that crank seal's done. Alright, well, that's fun. Let's start to get this engine apart and see what we've got to work with. So first thing we do is take the oil pump cover off, which will give us improved access to all of the screws that hold the clutch cover on. We shouldn't have to move the brake lever. I think it'll clear, but we will need to disconnect the cable for the oil pump from the top of the cover. Once that's done, we'll remove the feed to the oil pump feed to the left and right cylinder. I'm also going to take the left hand cover off and just remove the stator. Wow, really nice. I can't believe how good that looks inside. That looks almost brand new. And very little miles. So with the cover off, the wires disconnected, we're just threading a really long bolt that we're going to use as a slide hammer to pull the generator magnets off. And we got really lucky there. This came off so easily. The end of the crank's not too bad, but that pin will need to be changed. That doesn't look good. So now we'll just give a tap on the clutch cover, and here we go, even more water, so there's still more water inside. Now we'll turn our attention to the clutch. We'll remove all of the screws that secure the cover, and then we'll remove all the plates, which actually look pretty good. be replacing the lock washer. We use our impact gun just to spin that off. Store all these pieces in order so we can remember how it all goes back together. Once we've got this drive gear off, I'm really interested to see the condition of the crank seal, and I was expecting it, honestly, given that we've got so much oil coming out of the exhaust. I was expecting to see the seal actually hanging out of the crankcase, but didn't look too bad. And the moment we got the crank seal out, oil started to pour out from the crankcase. So I'm pretty sure that right-hand cylinder is full of old oil. So that seal's been leaking pretty badly. I'm actually really glad we didn't try to do anything with this or try and start the bike. The telltale signs with the oil and the water in the oil were bad enough. Actually, as we removed the collar from the crank seal, all of this oil came out from the bottom of the cylinder. So all of this has been sitting inside the crankcase, and that kind of explains, I could kind of, when I did my leak down test and I was putting air into the right hand cylinder, I could actually hear gurgling, so that kind of makes sense, and I could hear air hissing, so there's definitely a leak, and I'm not sure if it's from this seal. I would imagine it probably is, or the engine cases themselves are leaking, but that's a little more unusual. So we're going to remove the cylinders. We've got the stator off, we've got everything off on this side. We may actually just pull the shift shaft out and take the sprocket off before we take the engine out of the frame. The frame holds it nicely while we work on it. And then we'll get this apart, split the cases, and see what we've got inside. So let's continue work with a little Yamaha. Let's get the cylinder head off, let's get the barrels off, then we can pull the engine from the frame and open it up, and let's see what's really going on inside this little engine. So as we loosen up the 4 nuts on the top of the cylinder head, we can take off the right and left heads. Actually, I can already see inside the cylinders, and they actually look in pretty good condition. The speedo actually shows the bike's only done a couple of thousand miles, so unless it's been absolutely hammered, you wouldn't expect the cylinders and pistons to be particularly bad. Some gentle taps and these cylinders pull straight off, just breaks the gasket seal on the bottom of the engine case. Once the piston clips are removed, we can then just push the pins out and lift the pistons off the rods. Well, now we've got the cylinders and heads off. There's a little surprise in the left hand side there. It is absolutely full of oil. I don't think I've ever seen one as full as that. That's actually full to the bottom of the rod. Incredible. There we go. Let's get this engine out and get it in half. So as I mentioned earlier, everything internally actually looks pretty good. The pistons are not bad, heads are in good shape, normal amount of oil you'd expect to see, and the bores look pretty good. But we'll remove the engine now from the frame, get it onto the bench, probably give it another wash before we break it apart. A little bit of careful manoeuvring and out she comes. Given there's actually so much oil in both cylinders, I think we'll have a careful look at the oil pump as well. I'm suspicious that the oil pump has just let oil leak from the oil tank, and it's just filled up the cylinders. It just seems to be a bit too much for leaky seals. So one final trip to the solvent tank just to get the majority of this grease and oil and grime that I couldn't reach with the bike in the chassis. Now turn our attention to the last few items on the right hand side of the case to remove, so that we can put the case splitters onto the case and actually separate the left and the right cases. Just making careful note to document where all the spacers and washers go so I don't forget. Switch over to the left side of the bike, remove the clutch push rod and also the little detent ball for the shift drum. Take off the neutral switch, and we can start to remove those JIS screws that hold the cases together from the left side. So just got 2 screws left, one that's still full of dirt which we'll pick out before we try and get the impact driver on it, and then there's a second one just below the crank seal that might give us some trouble as I've spun the head a little bit with my impact gun. Once the crank puller's in place and we've got the studs secured to the case, we can secure the puller down to the studs, and we can get the engine off the stand and get ready to start to apply a little bit of pressure and see if we can pull the cases apart. Ready to go. I've just decided to remove the cylinder studs. As you're kind of grappling with the case, as we start to pull this apart, they can sometimes get in the way and poke you, so it doesn't hurt to get those off. So now we start the process of gradually applying pressure using the puller. Make sure we try and get the rods in a safe and secure place so they can so that the left rod can slide out with the left half of the case, and then constant tapping, loosening off, tapping again, and just slowly work your way off. On this bike, we're fortunate there's a couple of good points at the front and the back where if you're really struggling you can put a pry bar in without actually touching any of the faces that obviously hold oil. So, but you've got to be really careful. But the thing is just to take your time, tap, loosen, just keep going until the two halves come apart. Again, as I apply pressure to the crankcase, I'm just making sure the rods are not catching and are not caught. It's really easy to hang those up and get everything locked. I've got the case a little pinch by the look of it, with the rear a little further ahead of the front, so just loosen it off again, start all over again, and then away we go. As the cases finally do come apart, this is the point where it's good to try and go slowly, just because gears and washers will often fall off and you want to try and get those put back in the right place before you forget. Same thing when you pull out the gearbox cluster, is do it slowly so you can see where everything goes, because in a minute this gear is going to drop off and I'm going to put it back on the wrong shaft. Now we have the cases apart, everything doesn't look too bad. And I'm lucky enough to have a nice press, so I'm actually just going to press the crank bearings and the gearbox bearings out of the case. So there we have it, the engine's finally split in half. We've got the crank out, the gearbox out, all of the seals and bearings have been removed, and this is probably a good place to stop for part one. In part two, we'll start the process of getting everything clean and have a very close inspection of the crank, the gears, and all of the internal components. Get everything vapor blasted, cleaned, so that we can thoroughly inspect it, and then start the process of the engine rebuild. We hope you've enjoyed the process so far. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in part two.